Funding for The Router Workshop is provided in part by Hitachi Power Tools, manufacturers of a full range of construction and woodworking power tools. Today, in The Router Workshop, Bob and Rick Rosendahl craft some of the most unusual trivets you've ever seen. Rick shows you how to make a jig for cutting perfect square trivets. The old master shows you how to make a jig and cut beautiful round trivets that are sure to be a hit at craft shows everywhere. That's all on Trivets, Trivets, Trivets. Coming up next, right here, in The Router Workshop.
Welcome to the Router Workshop. And Dad, what are we going to do today?
Well, we got a series of trivets here, Rick, and they're kind of neat that we did these at a stop, so we didn't run right through. We're going to show them how to do them right through, but we'll show them how to do this.
That's right.
And this one in here, we've got a little box thing that the lid fits on.
That's a potpourri box.
That's what it is. Well, we got it there.
All right.
This is really neat. We've got a special little drilling jig that we used and drilled it up into that. Now we can use it as a circle jig. And see, we got them on this side, but then when you turn them on this side, we got the neat ones. They're offset, and that kind of makes it a little different, eh?
Right on.
Let's give it a try.
All right. I'll take these pieces with me and we'll get started.
I'm going to start off with here, and I've got a 3/8 bit chucked up. And we're going to use the little fixture in here. We call it a spacer fence. And we're going to start off with here and make some box joints. And what I need to do is bolt this down. And we'll put a bolt on each end here, and they're pre-drilled into the table so the spacing comes out. But I'll explain that to you in just a second. I need to get the two bolts in here. And I should have another one in the end. We got it. And we'll slip that down into place. Now the idea of this is a repeat, so every one's the same. And I'm going to need a screwdriver here, so I'm going to just take and pull this out. One thing about it is that the router bit turns in this direction, so the pressure is here. If you don't have these tight in it, it could slide it a little bit too, and you want to make sure that you've got them on. So we'll set it up. Now, I want to give you the theory of what we've got here. We chucked up a 3/8 bit. That is, it's going to cut a 3/8 wide slot. The fence is 3/8, and the space between is also 3/8. So we got three things that are equal. However, if you happen to sharpen the bit, take some of that diameter away, you may have to alter that space in it. And by doing that, we just need to get our fine adjusting tool here. If you tap that in, it makes a space less inside of here, then the joint will be loose. If you tap it out, of course, you make it wider, and it's going to be a little tighter. So we'll start off here. Now, the only other thing you have to set before you can start is the height of the bit. I'm going to get a little block of wood here and set up. Use my little push stick in it, and this is my material. I'm cut up always, and it's a good idea to do, is have a couple of sample pieces that you can try first. You never know when you make up the blocks of wood just how smooth they are or how equal they are in thickness. And what we need to do is raise the height of the bit to the thickness of material you're using. Well, don't measure it. Just set it down like that beside it, and we can put another block over the top. And then you can raise that cutter up, and you can raise it right up to there, and then you've got it. Don't measure things when you don't have to. Now, that's just exactly flush with it, and that's what we want it to be, because one of these go through. And we'll plug in and try this. Now, there's the first one we've cut. If you look at my block, I put a notch in it too, but that gives you support so that you don't get any tear out on the back side. Now the next one we need to do is just lift it over like that. I'm going to just hold those for now. You'll notice on here that I got a little tail end lift. It's probably just that little bit wider in it. Now we could joint that off before we glued them together. But I'll keep those for a little later. We'll dry fit them for you now. What I'd like to switch with, seeing we told you about trivets, let's make a trivet in here. I'd like you to look at the block that I've got first. The grain is running up and down this way. Now when I turn it over, the grain is running the opposite way. That way we're able to go through here and make repeat cuts, and you'll have some strength. Otherwise you'd be on the short grain. Having laminated them together, that's how high we're going to have to set that bit, is half that distance. So I'm going to set it like this and just lower this cutter down, and then I'll let you have a peek at what I've got here. And I might go just a shade further than what I need, just to make sure that it comes out. Now I'll let you look there. Now what I'm going to do is just run with the grain. I won't even need a stick behind it because you won't get any tear out with it. This is the grain this way. Remember, I'm crossing there, so I'm going to have to switch it when you come that direction. Now we got another neat trivet. You notice I left this block on the end because with the space, it would have been a slot in it. What you need to do now is just leave that same amount of 3/8 on there and cut that off, flip it over and do the same on this side, and you've got a nice little pot mat or trivet that you want to use. Now, what I've got here is I've marked this, and I've marked it with an X. That's the center of this block, and I'm going to cut it round off of there eventually, so that'll be my center point. And I'm using a 1/8 pin in there, so I've got a 1/8 bit in my router. And if I can just get this cord out of the way and pop this down, maybe we can show you. Now, I'm going to set it up in here so I've got approximately the depth because I want to go right through, but I won't need to go quite that deep. So we'll just take it back, and I want to go right through on it if I can because I need the pin hole that deep. But there we go. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to kind of guess at this, and because it won't matter. I got lots of room there to work on, but we'll just center that up over the hole, and we'll drill the hole. Now what I did was drill that hole in it. Now I'm going to install a 7/16 guide. That guide will work with my jig that I have to make those circles. It's the same diameter in it. So we need to put that in. It's got a ring nut on the back side. And when I get this on, I'll let you have a look at it because the bit will center right on that guide. We'll just tighten that up here. Make sure you finger tighten it. Set it in here. Let you have a look at it. Now, there's the bit. It's a 1/8 bit yet that I've used. And here's the guide. And what we're going to do is drill 2 holes, and they're going to be off-centered from the other 2 when I place the jig on it. So let me just slide that over and pick up the fixture. The fixture has a 7/16 hole in it. It has a series of equally spaced ones in it. This one here is further than the equal spacing. That's my center that's going to cut the circle. But I'm going to put it on the second one in here, and I'm going to drill a hole in there and try to keep it a little bit lined up. It doesn't really matter that much, but we want to place it down in it. Now, when I drilled the hole before in it, I was down to 1/2 inch material, but I've added a 1/4 inch in it. So now what we've got to do is raise this up a 1/4 inch higher so that we can go right through. And so we now, and again, we're going to need this 1/2 inch material in it. So we pop it in here like that, set it down, and I'm going to drill a hole. And it doesn't really matter because there's circle work here. Now, there's the hole that we've got. Now we'll just take and return that. My pin came with it here. And we'll return it to the opposite side. Just set that down. And again, I'm 2 holes away from that, so I'll just take and put it back in. Rotate it over to the opposite side. And about across from one another will be good. And we'll set it in there. And we'll plunge it down. I'm going to take this off in here because the next operation is going to make this round in it. And to do that, I've got to change cutters.
After installing a 1/4 inch bit and the same 7/16 guide, Dad positioned the circle jig and cut out the circle.
There's the circle. There's the halves. One's kind of sticky in here because it's got a little tape on it. And we'll just clean that off a bit so you can see what we're doing. Now we're going to make our little circles inside of here to make that trivet. So we're going to move that point. We're going to move it out to the furthest one here. And we'll do them on this side. Then we got to switch it over. So So we'll start with the one the closest and make sure that that pin is right down so your router doesn't drag on it. And this time we've got to reset the depth of the bit again. We want to go half that thickness. And if you remember when we went down, it was 1/2 inch. So what is it this time? It'll be 1/4. So we'll put our 1/4 bar in here, and we'll lower that down. And we'll give it just a little, make sure that they'll cross one another there. And I think that should do it. Set that down, tighten it. Now this is a very tight corner because we're right in there. I might have to help this around as we come. So let's start it off here and see what happens. Now we'll just have a look here. Lift that off my pin. And there's the first one. Now all we got to do is move out one more. I was at the first one, so now we'll do the second one. Now this second one is going to come right in and take that center point out that we originally used to cut the circle with, so that you won't have any little holes showing. Now, there's the second one. Have to sand these up after and get rid of those little furry edges. So we have number 2. Now we're looking for number 3. And we'll put that one out here. Now I think we'll just leave that in it. And what I'm going to do now is take this off, and I'll take this pin out of here, and I'm going to take this up, get my hammer here, and we're going to rotate it over and come from the other side. We can get that loose, and we'll brush that clean. Get rid of my pin, I don't want to do that. And we're going to have to take this tape off of here and put some new on the other side, because we're working from the opposite side. And then we should see what happens here. Okay, now, real sticky stuff. See if we can just get that tape. A couple of pieces probably will do us. Let's try that better here again. My knife out. There we go. Now that's the hole I used before. Now we got to move my pin out over to here. That's what we want. And move this one over there. And we'll start with the inside one again too. Depth is good. We'll start off in here. That inside one is always tough, and I got a little ways, I didn't quite make it around. It's hard to get a hold of that thing. I'm going to just start back about there, and that should do it. Just doesn't want to pull around because we're so close to the center. That should do it. And it did. Now we move out to the second one. And we'll pick it up. we'll do the third one. And we'll get the third one. Pretty soon you'll run out of circle here. Now, let me just set that router out of the way. Get my hammer here, see if we can get this thing loose. And see what we got here. Didn't come quite through as I wanted it to. Lost my pin. Ooh, that tape just sticks to everything, doesn't it? We're getting it. It's just that we got a lot of crud inside of it here to clean out. Anyway, you'll see where they cross in here. So here we got circle on the one side. This is the circle that did it, and then there's overlapping circles. If you want to get more of them in here, you move it closer to the center, you can get as many. But we've got 3 in here, plus the button in the middle, and on the opposite side, the same thing.
Our next operation is to make the small trivet and the potpourri box lid top. Well, the type of fixture I've got here to start with is going to give us an opportunity to make a start and stop groove. And if we take a closer look at the fixture to start with, it's got a guide fence that the guide's going to follow along the edge here. Another good tip here is when you're done with your fixtures is make sure you mark what type of router bit you're going to use, which is a 3/8 spiral, and the type of guide that you're going to use, which is a 1 1/8 guide. Let's look at our fixture a little bit. I've got a groove or a guide groove here in position, which gives us our first cut that we're going to make. So what we're doing is we're going to put this fence in, and if you look at it, it's got a block that fits into that groove, is we're going to run our guide, put a stop and start groove in it, and then what we want to do is we want to flip this over and put it in our first groove, and it's just going to make us a step-by-step start-finish groove. All right, let's look at the router that we're using. Remember, I'm using a 3/8 bit, spiral bit, and a 1 1/8 guide. Got it all set up, and we'll just put this back in position so we can get started right away. Well, let's take a look at the guide, and let me get the lock in place because this has got a spring on it. And we'll set it up here so you can see it. There's the 1 1/2 inch guide. Here's the cutter already depth set on it. I've got one of the blanks here. And because we're doing stop and start grooves, if you look closely at the blank, you can see that it's kind of like plywood. I've got the direction of grain going in this direction on this side. If I flip it right over, it's going in the opposite direction, so it's going to be stronger. They're going to be crossed each other, and it's also going to allow us to stay so that we're not cutting across the grain. We're always cutting with the grain when we flip our pieces. All right, flip it open in place, and let's set the router up over the edge here, and all we're going to do is plunge down, cut the groove, let it up. So let's go ahead and get these pieces cut here. I'm going to need some power, make sure that we're in an off position, and plug it in, and let's get started. So we'll dust that out. We'll make our first cut so you can see it, clear out the debris a little bit. And there's our first cut. Now we're going to take our piece, and you remember the piece in place. All we're going to do is flip it around, set it in the hole, and it'll follow the guide on the next one. So we're going to go ahead and finish cutting all these pieces here now.
After cutting the offsetting linear slots, I chucked up a 5/32 Roman ogee bit and began to mold the edges of the potpourri box.
Our next operation is to set up and cut out the rabbet. So that's the next step. So I'll take off the fence that we've got here, and we're going to add a 3/8 inch rabbeting bit off some of the sawdust in place here. Make sure you unplug your router before you remove it from the router table. And let's change that bit. I'm going to put the new bit in, and then I'll show you the router bit I've got. Tighten it down. All right, we're going to set the depth on that piece to about 1/4 inch, and let me rotate the bit around. We're not going to use the bearing, we're going to use a fence, but all we want to do is put a rabbet around that box so it'll fit in, or rabbet around that lid so it fits in the box. So we'll flip it back down, my fence again, and just isolate that bearing a little bit. And I'll just use the lid here part to get that bearing isolated. And tighten her down. All right, let's cut the rabbet. Make sure you're going across the grain with the grain across the grain. Let's plug it back in and cut it.
Now it's time for Tips from the Workshop, Viewer Mail, and Tricks of the Trade on router bits, tips, and wood chips.
When making trivets, if you make them out of all one piece, what happens is you have a tendency you can break them very quickly. To prevent that, what we do is we glue up our pieces so that we have the grain alternating. We have a smaller or a thinner piece so it alternates the grain 90 degrees. A quick and easy way to set up and make your trivets right.
Well, I'm going to see if this box fits. Boy, it better fit your lid. I don't know
it
what
will.
size
Well,
you use,
I got
but
my size.
You got it all done. What
You're going to have
happens
to
if it
match
don't
me
fit?
here.
Oh, I got a tight fit in there. I tell you, don't take much glue with this one.
Right.
And I suppose you even want me to put it kind of square.
All right, and let's see if we can get the lid to fit on that. That potpourri box can look good. Now, do you have a trivet done?
And I got the trivet.
I've got my square
and we got
trivet
this. Let's just tip this up here so we can have a good look.
at all
There's
three
the lid.
pieces. There's the
And
lid,
there.
there's the trivet, you get the round trivet,
And we got everything.
and we're done. That's it, folks, but we'll be back next time for another fun project right here in the Router Workshop.
We'd like to hear from you. You can email us at the address on your screen. Send your comments, questions, or project ideas to the Router Workshop, Post Office Box 608, Chamberlain, South Dakota 57325. Or in Canada, the Router Workshop, Post Office Box 280, Ely, Manitoba ROH-OHO. To learn more about the Router Workshop, visit us at the internet address on your screen. Next time, master craftsmen Bob and Rick Rosendahl create an exquisite walnut writing box. The laptop of the 15th century, the escritoire was the original desk. Bob will show you how to cut the 15-degree bevels for the rounded lid, while Rick cuts perfect box joints for the tray. That's next time in the Router Workshop. Funding for The Router Workshop is provided in part by Hitachi Power Tools, manufacturers of a full range of construction and woodworking power tools. You can now order rotor bits, tips, and wood chips. A 45-minute video featuring Bob and Rick Rosenthal's personally selected shop tips and rotor techniques. To order your copy of this home video for $19.95 plus $4.95 shipping and handling, have your credit card ready and call 1-800-803-1449.